I am so pleased to be here tonight to honor Colonel Harlan Sanders. You know, in 1964, when Colonel Sanders sold his company, he remained in an ambassador and a brand recognition spokesperson role. And I had the opportunity when I was a small child to meet him. And I remember just being a very young girl and looking at him, and he embodied the Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and everything rolled in one. And I thought he was magical. I just thought he was so magical. And as an adult, I realized he really was, because he embodied the spirit of giving and philanthropy and being present in the community and loving the Commonwealth and everything it embodied. And so I was so privileged to meet him, and I hold that very dear. He was conscious capitalism before we really knew what that was. That's a new term, but he really was that person. And I'm also very honored tonight to be able to introduce Governor John Y. Brown. Bobby did a great job of talking about how Governor Brown really impacted our state and brought business and that aspect and everything that he's meant to the Commonwealth. I know everybody in this room knows that. But from a KFC perspective, Governor Brown and a group of investors purchased KFC for $2 million in 1964. And it then grew from 600 franchisees to 3,500. And it has been such a lesson. Harvard Business School selected Governor Brown as 100 people whose business leadership really helped shape the way that people work, live, interact. And we all know that here, and it's nice that was recognized on such a global platform. So help me welcome Governor John Y. Brown, Jr., who's accepting the award for Colonel Harlan Sanders on behalf of his family.
You come over here.
Whatever the governor says.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I'm back for one reason. I'm the only one still alive that worked with Colonel Sanders. And what a story. You talk about entrepreneurialism in its finest form. So sit back and enjoy the stories that I had the opportunity to learn from the one and only Colonel Harlan Sanders. When you think about Colonel Sanders, to make it short on the front end, there was a man near retirement age, had a service station, fussed with everybody, but he wanted more customers, put a couple of tables in and served some food. Fooled around in the garage and came up with the idea of a pressure cooker, first one, to keep the juices in and keep the grease out. Fooled around with a bunch of herbs and spices, came up with 11 herbs and spices. Got in his car, 10-year-old Cadillac with his wife, traveled around the country, knock on doors of middle type of restaurants all over the country, and tell the owner, said, look, let me come cook you some chicken. If you like it, I'll give you a license. Over a period of about 8 or 9 years, he had opened up 600 stores. Well, that one man, and what he did in the garage and service station, changed the eating habits of the world. Think about it. And further, and more importantly, of all the people, you can put both Bushes, both Obamas, both Clintons, put Mandela on the pasteboard, more people would recognize the man in the white suit than anyone else in the world. Right here from Kentucky, one of our own Kentuckians. So we have a right to be proud of Colonel, but I'm going to tell you some stories about the Colonel that you don't know. You know, there's the truth, and then there's the real truth. And the Colonel called me. I was on a TV show. I was practicing law in Louisville with my dad, and I was on a TV show with Ned Breathitt. They introduced him. I was 29 years old. He wanted to hire me as his real estate lawyer. And I didn't know anything about real estate, and I didn't even like law to start with. And so I didn't go see him for 6 months. I didn't know what he did. He wore a white suit, a little bit strange, you know. I didn't know if he worked out of his basement or what he did. And I ran into him at the Kentucky Derby, governor's breakfast. And I thought, oh my gosh, I should go by and see him. And so fortunately, the next week I stopped by, and the Colonel called me in his office. We had a nice talk. He was very friendly, knew my dad, and told me about this chicken and this, that, and the other. And he said, let me take you upstairs and show you how we operate. And it had a big file of all these franchisees, and they take in $100 a month, $150, some of them $200, $300 a month. And I said, my gosh. And so he said, come on with me. I'm thinking about starting a new barbecue franchise. Just show you how luck is involved with all our entrepreneurs. We know those of us that have been fortunate to know how much luck is involved. And so we went to the Pink Pig in Frankfurt, and he wanted to start a barbecue franchise. Well, what was my next idea? Well, let me do that for you, Colonel. So we were partners, 50-50. He gave me the right to open up Porky Pig barbecue, with also had the right to put in KFC. We found out when we opened we did 80% chicken, 20% barbecue. We were in the wrong end of the right business. So that's what gave me my opportunity. I didn't have enough money to open the store, and so like all of us entrepreneurs, I knew somebody that knew somebody. And in fact, it was my first wife, Ellie, had a friend moving back to Lexington, and her husband was the son of a mortgage banker in Nashville, and he brought in my eventual partner, Jack Massey. We sat to negotiate for 3 hours, about $16,000. I didn't know I was going to pay that back, but in any event, that got me my start. And one thing led to another. And I said, look, Jack, let me take you down and meet the Colonel. Maybe you can finance all his stores or whatever, his equipment. And first time I introduced the Colonel in Shelbyville, Colonel looked at me and said, I want you to know there's no city slicker going to come in here and buy my company. So we got off to a pretty poor start, but one thing led to another. And we had the idea. We had a great relationship. Jack was a great partner and great mentor to me. And we asked the Colonel if he would sell, and we made a deal. And then we had to go to Salt Lake City to get approval of his main franchisee, Pete Harmon. And so that night I wrote the contract, and the next morning, 6 in the morning, when the restaurant there, we signed the deal. We got back home. Well, every day he had 17 employees, most of them his family, and they got to tell him, well, you know, you shouldn't sell. You know, they're going to change the recipe. They're going to fire you. And every day he's quitting. He's not going to do the deal. And so I didn't know how to stop it. My partner, you know, he had his lawyer, an old maid, bureaucratic kind of lawyer, taking forever to do a deal that all had been done in one day. And so after about 60 days, I said, what I'm going to do, I had the idea. I went down to Barry Bingham at the Courier-Journal, who published the Courier-Journal, and I just informed him, did you know that Colonel Sanders sold his business to my partner, Jack Massey, and I? Well, the next day we had a camera and a story, and we had a Colonel, and went nationwide how Colonel Sanders selling his business for $2 million. That's the way we closed the deal. So entrepreneurs have to find different ways to do the deal. And once we took over, it was a little bit strange because we didn't think about the restaurant business. I'd never read a balance sheet or a P&L, and just asking questions. I had a great partner, and we just figured it out day to day and went from there. And then we, a few months later, had a franchise meeting, and about 600 of these franchisees and their family came in. They looked at us with great suspicion, like, who are y'all? What do y'all know about chicken? You ever fried a pot of chicken? And one thing led to another, and finally I got lucky. Paul Horning, as you sports fans know, was a Heisman Award winner, and he's a good buddy of mine, and he knew somebody, and got the Colonel on What's My Line. And that's what really launched our company, because once he was such a showman. You know, he was in a lawsuit one time, and the opposing lawyer asked him about how he got that name Colonel. What war did you fight it? He said, I didn't fight any war. He said, well, you explained to the jury the meaning of that name that you used before your name. And he said, it means about the same thing that honorable means before your name. It doesn't mean a damn thing. So the Colonel was the greatest promoter you can imagine, because once I got him on, I spent my whole first year I had a young PR fella named San Louis, New York. We worked till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning thinking of ideas. How can we get him on this show and that show? We got him on What's My Line, I've Got a Secret, Missing Links. Finally, we had the idea, how about the Colonel take this whole $2 million in a big plastic case and push it out on stage? And so we sold that, and we got him on Johnny Carson, and he made a big hit. He danced on Lawrence Welk. Bear Bryant, I knew somebody that knew Bear, and he let the Colonel sit on the sideline of the Alabama-Nebraska game. And don't you know, the first time there was a touchdown, the crowd roared, and there's the Colonel waving his cane. He didn't know Nebraska scored, not Alabama. So now, we all know the Colonel by history, that he didn't like and wouldn't work for anybody. He got fired out of at least a dozen jobs over his career, which is a perfect recipe for being an entrepreneur. Often, many of us are forced to be entrepreneurs because we don't like working for anybody. And the Colonel down deep, I think he loved the adulation. He loved the franchisees making a lot of money, and they were a tough crowd to deal with. I think my background of going to UK law school really was my greatest asset because he had 600 different contracts, and everything was on a verbal basis. I remember one time at a convention, our national convention, we must have had 3,000 people there down in Miami Beach, and he wore a black suit. For some reason, we left him out of the pension fund. You know, we had a contract. He's 75 years old. I didn't think we needed to have a pension fund for him. And so anyway, he was growling. He got up for 45 minutes and blasted the door. He didn't like my older partner, who was close to his age. And he said, you know, we're out to take their money. And John Brown, he still went behind the ears or whatever. And I said, what did I say? I stayed up all night the night before playing gin and rummy with one of my friends, George Baker. And I had everything scribbled out on a yellow piece of scratch paper. And I said, what did I say now? And my wife's crying, Claudia, and the colonel's wife's crying. The colonel had said his piece. It had built up for 2 years. We'd just gone public, and stock was rolling, and he just can't handle it anymore. And so instead of blasting him, my partner wanted to fire him right there on the stage. I said, Jack, sit down, and I'll handle it. I didn't know what I'd say, but for some reason, a few words came to me. I said, you know, the colonel's an artist. Like all artists, he's a perfectionist. And he's created the colonel's dream. You know, you have to pinch yourself to realize that this is happening to all of us. And I said, Colonel, we've honored every deal you made, as we promised when we bought your company. There's not a person in this room that can say we haven't honored every deal you made. He said, all right, raise your hand to the franchisees, and not a hand went up. And I said, we haven't raised a single price. And I said, McDonald's got 40 lawsuits. We've never had a single lawsuit. I said, besides, Colonel, the stock that we gave options to every franchisee has made them more money than they've ever paid us. So that was the first time that we really took control of the company. Because you imagine these franchisees, their life was the colonel. When he walked in a convention store that we'd have every year at regional, it'd be like someone walking on water. And he rose everybody. The electricity was so thick. It was such a special time. And, you know, that little company was bigger than McDonald's. We took that recipe, and I don't really like to take credit for it because it was the colonel's idea. And it was his image and his brand. And even though his talk around race came with us, and I was with him for 8 years, I loved the man. And I never had one argument with him. You know why? Every time he'd start growling about the gravy or chicken or somebody doing something, I'd say, Colonel, what's that material made of right there? He said, what's that, Johnny? And then he'd forget what he was talking about. So I understood exactly. In fact, about halfway through, about 3 years, he got mad at us, and he went to a fortune teller in New York on 53rd Street, as I recall. And the fortune teller told him it's time to quit. So he quit. And someone found on his desk who the fortune teller was. So I called our PR man who went and paid a visit to the fortune teller to get him to change his story. So this is true. We didn't do anything dishonest, but we needed him. We were desperate. And so shortly thereafter, he was a smart man. Don't get me wrong. This guy was the real deal. And that's why I feel really almost selfish taking credit, even though we took it out of the restaurants, put it in take-homes, built the company. We went on Wall Street. I mean, here's the colonel. Only 2 people ever been on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and that was LBJ and JFK. And I took the colonel down there to see if we could get in by chance. And they're all screaming now. They're all the floor salesmen are screaming for the colonel. So they let him through. They let us through. And everybody went nuts. And our stock went from, I think, 15 to about over 100 in about, months. It was the fastest growing stock on Wall Street for about a 2-year period. So, I had a great time, but it was such a great company, great people. I mean, just hardworking people. We made about 131 millionaires. I think that somebody read there'll be more Coca-Cola during that period of time. And it's all because of his idea and the fact that all these franchisees worked together, teamwork. And we got along great. And he carried the flag and led us to the promised land. An opportunity that when we were there, we were in some 30 foreign countries. I remember Lloyd Weston, who used to work for IBM here, wanted to go to Japan. And he lied to me. He told me he spoke Japanese because he was in the Korean War, which wasn't true. And I gave him $40,000 salary, $100,000, and I said, go over and build one. If it works, build 2. And I'd met earlier with some company called Mitsubishi. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they were the second largest company in the world at that time, conglomerate. And I came back 8 years later when I was governor on an economic trip, and Lloyd met me with a busload of his employees. They had 800 stores. So it just shows you how a simple idea, as I quoted in that little tape they had up there. One reason there wasn't anybody on that tape where worked with the colonel. These were the grandchildren and the children talking about he cooked good food. But this man was a brilliant man, a visionary. Of the 10,000 employees that I had when I was CEO, I listened to the colonel more than all 10,000 because many of them are bureaucrats. They want to come in and change this and that. That's one reason I sold. Once it got so big and the bureaucrats came in, I hired all these. In fact, to tell you, I didn't know anything. After 3 years, I went to Harvard Business School to learn how to run a company because I didn't think I knew. I'm just figuring it out day to day and using my instincts as former encyclopedia salesman, my law background. And I met at the George T. Baker School. You'll love this story, you entrepreneurs, they're not close. But they asked me about the company. They never heard of KFC, and I told them about how we franchised chicken. We built chicken stores, we franchised. And after about 20 minutes, one of them asked, I said, what about your sales? I said, well, we've gone about 3 million to over 100 million. I didn't know, I thought everybody did that. And so the host, as a professional would, had sort of a frown on his face and said, what about your profits? And I said, well, we've gone about 300,000, a little over 10 million pre-tax. I didn't know if that was anything extraordinary. And the host smiled at me and said, Mr. Brown, you just go on back and you all keep doing whatever you're doing. Don't let us confuse you. So anyway, I'm here, and every Kentuckian ought to honor Colonel Sanders because he's done more in Kentucky Fried Chicken, not only bringing yums to Louisville and what it's meant to our brand, but you talk about, our horseman is great, our bird business is great, but around the world, they'll know more about Kentucky Fried Chicken, which gives me great honor and motivation because I've spent a lifetime having the opportunity to sell in Kentucky. And what better? And when I lived in Tennessee, can you imagine how miserable I was living in Orange Land? I couldn't wait to bring it on back here to Kentucky. So it's a night I'm very proud of, and I owe my career to, and I think we can all feel and give a salute to the man that made it all possible and made Kentucky proud. Thank you.
Now, I think we have some of the family members here. The Colonel, where are you? Right. Thank you all for your family's contribution to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Now, we're getting ready to wrap up here. The theme you heard tonight is about entrepreneurship, is about family. It's about people believing you. It's about taking a risk. And sometimes you don't always win. But if you keep at it, it'll make a difference. And one last thing I wanted to mention tonight is that we have launched the Kentucky Entrepreneur Network thanks to Delta Dental, the Making Smiles Happen Foundation. And we're about to release a survey right after Thanksgiving. We want to get 1,000 or more entrepreneurs to fill out a survey and say, what's working for you? How are things working in the Commonwealth? And with the crowd here tonight, us working together, it creates jobs, it creates wealth, and it makes our Commonwealth a greater state. So I want to say thank you again to all of our sponsors for all their great contributions. I want to thank Dave and your wonderful staff. Jim Ford does a marvelous thing of putting these and he's got a whole staff that helps them make this a success every time they do something, and I'm just proud to be a part of it. So with that, thank you everyone, drive safe, and come back next year.